Welcome back to Talk of the Town on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
We welcome you back to Talk of the Town for this Friday, December the 4th. I'm Gary Stevens. We'll return to open line calls after the 11 o'clock news block, but on this first Friday of the month, we spend our 10:30 segment chatting with what is going on with the Community Foundation of the Holland, Zeeland area. Its president, Mike Goorhouse, is on the other side of our Zoom connection. Mike, good morning and welcome back to WHTC.
Good morning, Gary. Thanks for having me.
Glad you are with us. And if you have a question for Mike about one of the many things that the Community Foundation is doing or how you can be a part of the effort in the Community Foundation, you'll be happy to take the call at 395-1450, 395-1450. Before we go much further, keep in mind that we will put a link to the Community Foundation's website, which is CFHZ, or CFHZ.org, in the description of the podcast when we put the podcast up with Mike on our website at WHTC.com shortly after our conversation is over. You've heard from CBS, Mike, some of the numbers and the reactions and the ongoing impact of the COVID-19 outbreak nationally. Locally, the Community Foundation has been very much in the forefront of helping businesses and individuals get through the situation that we all find ourselves in. And another program has been unveiled by the Community Foundation. It's called the Direct Cash Assistance Program. Tell us a little bit about it and some of the new developments involving with that.
Yeah, so we're actually announcing the end of this program. It's a program that's been going on for close to 6 months. So back in June, we worked with three key partners: Community Action House, Good Samaritan Ministries, and Movement West Michigan, which is a coalition of churches, to launch this program. And it had we put $100,000 in, and then some private donors gave an additional $500,000. So there was $600,000 that went out in $500 payments. It was an unrestricted cash payment to local families to spend on whatever their needs were. So you can kind of do the math: 600,000 divided by 500. 1,200 families in our town got this assistance, and there was criteria to qualify. And the families had to have a relationship with one of the nonprofit partners or the church partners. They were the ones that certified that they were meeting the criteria. The criteria was that they had to have lost more than 50% of their income over the between March 1 and the time that they were getting the dollars. So less than half their income. They had to have made less than $50,000 as a household each of the last 2 years, for 2019 and 2018. And then there was a certain geography they had to live in, a certain number of zip codes. In addition, we targeted the first round of funding for those that hadn't received federal stimulus funds or the unemployment assistance. As many people know, there was a significant backlog and delay on many of those payments early on in the spring and summer. And there's also members of our community who weren't eligible for those programs. So in particular, migrant workers, undocumented immigrants, and others in our community don't get that federal assistance. So this was an unbelievable partnership. I don't know this for sure, but I believe it's probably the largest direct cash assistance program that our community's ever had. And the stories were just unbelievable. People may say, $500, what kind of difference does that make? And there's no question that the needs are great, and $500 isn't going to solve all the issues. But statistically, close to 40% of our community has less than $500 in their savings account. So if you just think about that, about basically just under half our community, the $500 would be equal to what they currently have in their savings account. So that's a big deal. And we have hundreds and hundreds of stories from individuals who use it to pay rent, to buy groceries. One of my favorite stories, the beauty of unrestricted cash. Here's what we love about it. No matter, we don't know exactly what that person's financial need is in the moment. Maybe they're getting food from Community Action House, but it's rent they have an issue with, or maybe they got rent covered through Good Samaritan Ministries eviction diversion program, but it's a medical bill or a car payment, a car fix, or something like that. So this allows them to use it however they want. But the beauty too of this is it's a very dignity-based approach, which means that sometimes the best thing with part of that $500 is something that may seem trivial, but is really important for the family. So my favorite example was there was a mother who used, I think she said $18 of her 500 to buy her daughter a birthday cake. It was her daughter's birthday. It was the middle. I mean, everything's not going the way any of us want it to. And to be able to normalize that birthday for that young woman, I mean, how important is that, right? I think you talk about stability and mental health and all these other things. So anyways, it's just one of my fun examples because it may seem a little frivolous, but when you're trying to keep food on the table and everything else, a birthday cake's not a good choice. But when you get a little extra like this, you can do that. But you got folks that are saying, I was down to my last, I mean, I wasn't going to be able to make that next payment, or, I took in a story of a single mom of 5 kids. So her hours dropped. Her mom got really ill, so her mom moved in with her. So now she's caring for her mom and 5 kids and lost hours. I mean, that's enough stress that none of us need to be going through that. So how can we come alongside and walk alongside these folks? And so I just wanted to celebrate today. It's one of these, it was a program that was done very much relationship based. So again, everyone had to be a relationship with a church or a nonprofit. And then we worked through these organizations to identify the individuals with the highest amount of need. And then they were able to, the national organization is called Family Independence Initiative, that they process the payments. So they could get a direct into their bank account, or they would get a debit card mailed to them. And it is one of those cool things. I have to give kudos to the donors who helped make it happen. They wish to remain anonymous, but the partners that made it happen, but most importantly, the families that are just working tirelessly to try to make ends meet, and want to call it up as one more way that we got creative and innovative as a community to help our neighbors.
Now, the thing is, you were expecting an X amount of people to do it. It turned out to be X plus Y plus Z, and let's just put it this way: it's more than double the amount that was expected to be helping in this program.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, when we started it, when we launched it, we thought we were going to be able to get to about 200 to maybe 250,000 in the direct cash assistance amount available. But then these donors really, one in particular, really just had a heart for this and supercharged the effort. And so we ended up with 600,000, which was great. So I mean, again, 1,200 families, really significant, really meaningful, and really cool program, and just one more way that our community should be proud of stepping up to care for those who are in the dire straits.
395-1450, 395-1450. If you have a question for Mike Goorhouse, who is the president of the Community Foundation of the Holland, Zeeland area. You talk about helping those in need during this time. How about a pat in the back, and not just a pat in the back and a hearty handshake for those who are our first responders, maybe a little help for them as well. And Futures for Frontliners was the program, and it looks like that's working out pretty nicely.
Yeah, so this is a call out and a shout out to everyone and anyone who's listening to spread the word about this. I know there's been so many things happening in the last 9 months, but one of them coming out of our state government this summer was a program they called Futures for Frontliners, and they offered discounted community college tuition to anyone who was considered an essential worker during the shutdown of April and May. So that's folks working at grocery stores, working at hospitals and care facilities, working at essential manufacturing. If your job required you to work when everyone else was shut down, then you get access to heavily discounted community college for a 2-year degree. And so the hard part is you have to apply by December 31. So you got 4 weeks, a little less than 4 weeks to apply. Then you can start the program and get in. But you're talking, you could save yourself $8,000 to $10,000 on an associate's degree. Get yourself a 2-year degree for a lot less money. And Grand Rapids Community College and Muskegon Community College are both participating. GRCC has this new campus coming to town out at the mall. They're coalescing all their places. So I just encourage anyone, if you were working, and there's a website that gives you all the details about whether you qualify. The website is michigan.gov/frontliners. That's michigan.gov/frontliners. www.ccpg.org/frontliners. That will tell you whether you qualify or not, gives you all the details. But again, it's December 31. I'd hate for folks to get to February, March and say, hey, I'm thinking about going back to school and getting that certification or that degree and miss out on this free money. So just spread the word with anyone that you may know, any age. But we just want to encourage folks to take advantage of, frankly, for some free money to further your education while it's out there.
This is not the time for the argument, well, we don't have community colleges around here. And, I know GRCC is trying to expand its footprint in a virgin area. They don't have to worry about competition around these parts, but that's for another time. 395-1450, 395-1450 if you have a question for Mike Goorhouse of the Community Foundation. Operating grants that normally we chat about, it's still, you still need to take care of some nonprofits that or some other entities that want to get started. Gets a little bit of a boost from the Community Foundation. Looks as if even though that program might have been a little bit on the back burner over the last few months, it's still going.
Yeah. So we've, as many listeners have heard or read in our various communications, we really pivoted in the spring. Everyone says that word pivot this year, but this spring, and focused our grant making on these basic needs, this mental health, education, financial stability, responding to COVID. But as we got to the fall, we wanted to make sure that we were there for our nonprofits who may not be providing direct service in response to COVID, but who are having a tough year. They had to cancel their fundraising events. They might not have been able to have their fee for service revenue. But these are organizations that we want to survive. We want to make it through so that when we're on the other side of this thing, they contribute to the vitality of our community. So this is organizations like our arts organizations, the Arts Council, the museum, organizations that serve specific populations like Compassionate Heart Ministries or Benjamin's Hope. These kinds of organizations that we wanted to make sure made it through. And so we did $150,000 worth of operating grants to 23 organizations. They weren't large. There was kind of three tiers, a $2,500, $5,000, and $10,000 tier. But the cool part was we didn't make anyone apply for this. What we did is we went through our list of organizations that we have supported over the last 8 years. And then we cross-checked it with the folks that had already gotten significant resources from us through the Emergency Human Needs Fund, the Stabilization Fund, and other things this year, and said, okay, this is the group. If we supported you in the past, that means we care about you, we care about your work, and you're important to our community. And so we surprised them. About a week and a half ago, we sent them all emails to say, you're getting a check coming in the mail. And that may not sound like a lot, but for us, there's usually a big process. You got to apply and review and all these kinds of things. And it was just a moment that we just needed to trust people to do what need to get done and get through. And so I think that many of them were happy. And I know a lot of our donors were proud that we didn't forget about some of those organizations that may not be in the front line right now, but are going to be important to the long-term success and thriving of our community. And so after everything else we've done this year, we just dug deep one more time and said, let's make sure we get these out the door. So 150,000 to 23 organizations. The full list is on our website if people are interested in seeing more about who got those dollars. But was just, again, the only way we could do that is this community endowment that we have. I keep telling the story, people, we've been building this community endowment in the last 75 years for such a time as this. And these are the examples that we're able to do because of all of those who've made gifts, small, medium, and large, into that community endowment over the years, so that we'd have resources, flexible resources, to respond in a moment like this. And so between Emergency Human Needs Fund, Stabilization Fund, Direct Cash Assistance Program, we did a line of credit guarantees back in the spring. We did racial equity grants this summer, operating grants. I mean, we've just tried to throw the whole kitchen sink at it. And I think we're proud of how we've tried to help the community respond to this moment.
Mike, a very important event is coming up basically 2 weeks from yesterday, Thursday morning, about the Community Update webinar. Tell us about what's coming up on that.
Yeah, so on Thursday, December 17 at 10 o'clock in the morning, the Community Foundation is hosting a webinar to update anyone who's interested on what we're seeing right now in the community. We'll reflect a little bit about where we've come from in the last 6 months or so, but we're also going to spend a lot of time looking forward to the next 3 to 6 months in our community about what are things that we can do to respond to the situation that we're in. We found ourselves having this conversation with a lot of folks who are interested in the community. They would say, what do you see? What are the opportunities? What can we do to, where can we put resources to best mitigate some of the challenges we've gotten? And so after having that conversation about a dozen times one-on-one, we thought, let's just host a webinar for anyone who wants to hear. We can do it all at once. So if you're interested in getting kind of our take of what we're hearing and seeing on the ground, needs and opportunities, that webinar is December 17, Thursday at 10 o'clock, and you can register on our website, www.cfhz as in z.org. And it's interesting, Gary, you really think about, I think we have two mindsets going on in our community right now that are competing, right? So one, we hear news of these vaccines that are ready and coming, and it's really good news, right? It's optimistic, and frankly, we need a little optimistic news in our lives these days. So that's a really good thing. At the same time, what we are trying to also wrestle with is that, depending on who you listen to, it's likely going to be 4 months to 5 months probably before the broad community has really good access to these vaccines, until we can kind of get to that point where we're getting close to herd immunity if enough people take the vaccine. And so the trick is, it is not appropriate, I think, for our community just to say, you know what, let's just wait. Let's just deal with these next 4 or 5 months until that vaccine's coming, because that vaccine is coming. There's a lot of hurt and pain that can happen in the next 4 or 5 months if we don't dig deep and get creative and support our neighbors. So I think the important thing that I encourage for listeners is, yes, get in that optimistic, hopeful mindset and that frame that a vaccine is coming. And if enough of us choose to take the vaccine, then we'll be able to get to a point where we can lessen a lot of these restrictions and be a lot safer, and that'll be really, really good. At the same time, let's not let that dominate our minds so much that we forget that it's still 4 or 5 months out, which means education's still in a tough environment, financial stability with a lot of jobs are still in a tough environment. Isolation and mental health is still going to be there for the next 4 or 5 months, and that doesn't even go with the public health side of our hospitals and other folks caring. So I would just encourage you to keep both in your mind. Keep that optimistic and hopeful thing with the vaccines, but don't forget over the next 3 or 4 months to support our local organizations, care for your neighbors, whether you do it directly, do it through your place of worship, do it through nonprofit organizations. There's so many organizations that are doing great work right now, trying to keep people in their homes, trying to keep them fed, trying to support them. We're doing a big push for mental health awareness right now for young people and adults and others. So I just would encourage every folks, if you're doing okay, if this pandemic hasn't impacted you financially significantly, I'd encourage you to think about being really generous in the next 3 or 4 months. And there's so many places you almost can't go wrong. But just care for others right now. I promise you won't regret it. I don't think 2 years from now you'll look back and say, I wish I wouldn't have given that extra $200, that extra $500 or whatever to those in need. I don't think you're going to ever feel that. Dig deep. Let's all do our part if we can, and we'll get through this together.
You mentioned about the fact that contributions have helped the Community Foundation being able to do some of the things, and the website, which is cfhz.org, not only information on the webinar on the 17th, but also information about how people can contribute to the Community Foundation, especially with the endowment. And oh yes, we're coming up towards the end of the year. If you want to be able to write it off as a tax endowment, tax break, keep that in mind as well. Mike Goorhouse, the president of the Community Foundation of the Holland, Zeeland area, want to thank you very much for joining us this morning, and on a regular basis, on a monthly basis, tell us what the foundation is doing on WHTC's Talk of the Town. Wish you and your family and everyone involved with the CFHZ well over the next month or so. If all goes well, let's do this again after the first of the year.
Look forward to it. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you very much. That is Mike Goorhouse of the Community Foundation on Real News Now, 99.7 and 1450 WHTC.